Very good. Harmony Springs trustee meeting. Let's start with a word of prayer. Will you join me? Loving God, we come together this evening to discuss the plans you have laid out for us to continue to seek your guidance and wisdom in the decisions that we as a church made together. I ask that for these folks here gathered this evening and for myself, that you might continue to guide and direct us and that your spirit may be present in our discussions. Understanding and knowing that often trustee meetings get down to the nuts and bolts of things and looking at line items and numbers, but remind us of the bigger picture, the one where you are at work in our lives, in and through us as the church, and in the community of which we are a part. Thank you for your blessings in our life and in the life of Harmony Springs. In your name we ask all this. Amen. All right. I tried to do a little prep work beforehand today to bring some things up, some of these documents up. I sent an email out a few hours ago tonight. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I don't blame you. But I thought I'd just start out tonight by going over. It's been a while since we've looked at more detail at our financial health and picture as a church. So I thought I'd go over the highlights of that just to give us an idea of where we sit currently, and then we can go from there. A couple leadership meetings ago, the impetus for our meeting tonight was Chuck, as the chair of the trustees, suggested that we consider doing a stewardship campaign yet this year in 2020. So I thought if we work backwards a little bit, that just understanding where we are would be a good first step to get us in that direction. And then we can see how far we get tonight and start discussing the possibility of that. So let's see. I'll do my best to share screen and interrupt me whenever you want. There's only 6 of us, so you can unmute and feel free to interrupt me. All right, let's see here. All right, I think I'll start with this one. Can you all see that? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it looks like you can. All right, so she would just try to break down the important stuff for us and give us an update on where we are financially. So I'll try to go through this and explain it as best we can. It's very possible that we may have some questions that I may not know the answer to because I'm not actually physically doing the bookkeeping. I'm just looking at these reports like you. So if that's the case, I'll write them down and we'll pass them along to Donna and maybe get some answers here. But so this is through June, the end of June of this year. So the part top year to date, our pledge giving should be 52,185. That's that number, and then she has actual giving so far is 48,822. So that's 94% of what people said they would give. We're actually getting, and then the next item is interest earned on the money we have sitting in the bank. So that's what the first number is what we estimated in our budget back in November of 2012. And then the actual interest earned is that 16,481. But this is, I'm reading this like this, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but she has in there parentheses includes that $10,220 trustee transfer. So we would subtract that amount from that 16,000. So that is actual. So the subtracted amount sum is the actual interest that we've earned. Oh, There you go. I'm not looking at your faces either, so you'll have to just interrupt me if you want to say something. And then this year, you'll see this pop up in some of the reports. That $26,100 number is the PPP money we have applied for and got. So that's what that is. And then she was providing a comparison from 2019, what our numbers were at the same point in 2019. So that's those numbers. Then the next section is expenses. 2020 compared to 2019, that's 72,844 anticipated expenses, and then followed across to the right is 73,130 is actual expenses. And then you can look at the 2019 comparison, and I think she put in parentheses just so we know, and a reminder that in 2020, back in November when we did the budget, we moved impose salary from outside the annual operating budget into the operating budget. So that's why the expenses are quite a bit different between those 2 years. And then the next section is capital campaign. This is the 3-year campaign that we did to raise the last chunk of money through Church Extension with Church Extension's help. So you see there that 51,005 up until this point, and we've received 95% of that $48,705 number. And then she's adjusting for pledges that we have received that weren't initially turned in with the campaign when we did it, I think is what that is. So as of 6:30, then what the monies that we have through that campaign is that 58,145 number. So that is, she's doing, I think that breakdown is a year, and it was a 3-year campaign, and it was, as memory serves me, like $155,000 total pledge. So I kind of remember Church Extension telling us that, we get probably more of the money up front. So I'm not sure how that number compares to look like, but if we are consistent at that, seems to me like the math would be to take that 58,145 or possibly that 48,705 number and multiply it by 3. So we're pretty much on. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. The March to February capital campaign was when we were trying to increase our stewardship. It is not the building campaign, correct?
Well.
Or is it?
No, I think I don't think she gave me the increase in stewardship numbers. I think she just rolled that into the, sort of pledged versus actual giving. She just combined those two things together. So I think this is the actual capital campaign. I can clarify with her to make sure that's the case. But I think that I'm reading that like those numbers are from Sherry.
We did have that other campaign before the capital one that this is the last year for that one.
Yes.
To finish up.
Yeah. Let me ask Donna just to clarify the breakdown on that to see how she's accounting for that. Okay. I'm moving down to the next line there. The mutual aid, that's the fund that we just started for during the coronavirus when that started. And she's just breaking down that we had the $3,600 in donations. And then we've given out that 2,219 so far to 5 different people. And I just saw another one that Jennifer and Donna were just working on this week yet, damaged from the storm that came through. So that number will be a little bit different once we have the most updated numbers. And then the last section there is the mission giving, which is just as a reminder, we moved out of the regular operating budget last November and just set a goal of $6,000 to raise for organizations. So the column there under donations and the 1,830 number is what we've raised, those are, and then the expenditures just shows if we've given those, paid those out to those organizations yet. So when I was looking at that, I was, we kind of had to pivot quite a bit when coronavirus happened, and we raised a bunch of money for the mutual aid fund in that $3,600. So, the 3,610 plus the 1,830 is, I guess, about what we've raised. All right, let me switch back over to see your faces. There we go. All right, thoughts, questions on that? Does that make sense? I know we need that one clarification that I can ask Donna for sure. Okay. Very good, very good. All right, I'm going to switch to show you this other screen. Hopefully I am. Okay. So I'm just hitting a few things here on these 3 or 4 documents, but you should be seeing the comparison of pledged amounts to receipts right now. So this is giving this document, when you see this in the report that Donna sends out at the end of the month, breaks down giving, pledged versus, I'm just throwing that out for you. And then this one is a spending breakdown by month. So you can kind of get a better picture of what the expenditures are actually for. And this is last year's budget. Okay. I know there was another one in there I wanted to show you. Hold on a sec. Let's see. So when I look at these reports that Donna sends out, I always start at the end, actually, because all the other pages are more detailed breakdown. So I just want to go over this page. So this is really the last page on those reports is really the month-to-month breakdown of income versus expenses. So this is through, this is the monthly average, and then year to date on giving. And then you see that 26,100 number in there for the PPP program again. And then total disbursements, I'm over in the right-hand column, sorry. And you can read the rest of that. But the number I keep looking at over all these months is at the bottom, the average. So she averages out the monthly average, either over or under budget. So first is $814 where our income is over expenses for 7 months through 7 months of this year. And then when you include the PPP money, that 26,100, and the trustee transfer at the beginning of the year, which is that 10,220, then that's that $2,274 a month income over expenses.
So without the PPP money, we're 814 in the black. With the PPP money, we're 2,274 in the black.
Correct.
So we're actually in a pretty good position right now.
Correct. That is my understanding. And a lot of that, I mean, basically our giving is pretty close to, percentage-wise, is pretty close to what people said they were going to give, which is, you know, I've said a few times in church, is pretty amazing. And then our interest income, it seems like has been significantly higher than what we budgeted for or expected. So that is a plus also. Are you all reading this the same way I am? Because Lord, don't put all your eggs in my basket when it comes to reading financial reports and doing math for sure.
I guess what I was trying to figure out is it looks like we're negative 1,853 on the monthly, but over 15,918 on the yearly. So I'm trying to figure out how she's calculating that. Unless I'm reading that wrong.
I'm thinking it's probably because she lumped that PPP in all under one single month. So for 1 month, we had a huge surplus of money because of that one-time transfer, and then the rest of the months are basically shortfalls.
So you could read this such that July was not the strongest month on a monthly basis for the year, but over the course of 7 months, we seem to be in the black with or without the PPE money.
Yes, I think you're correct on that. I would be in agreement with you on that. All right, let me see what else. All right, I'm gonna switch gears for a second. We can always come back to that if we want. I want to show you the change order from Weaver with the boulders, just so you all kind of have an idea of how this works and or will work if we have other change orders. Let's see. I think that's right. All right, yep, you should be seeing the Weaver, it says Weaver at the top there. So basically, I've been saving any change orders. We've now had a couple because we had an initial change, but so the amount of that rock pile to move it, the $4,395 is the cost, the change order cost then for moving all of those rocks from where they were to the south side of the property. So when something like this happens and we have a change order we have to do, or a change order down the road that we want to do, this is what it would look like. So they break down at the bottom, you know, they show you what our original contract was, what the new total is. So that second to last line, the new contract sum, including this change order, will be, so that's the total amount of the building project thus far with all change orders included. And the way our contract read, it was either basically either Chuck or myself on the contract to sign these change orders and approve them.
So one thing that I wanted to mention, and I am by no means a construction expert. And I know we're pretty early. There was a significant amount of rain, as you guys know, a few days ago, and not on the property where they're working, but in the driveway, there was a significant amount of water collection, it looked like, to the side. So I don't know if that's something that, I know from that we had some water issues. Obviously, we talked about that a lot before we started building. But I don't know, as they're considering that, like if there's concerns about drainage on the driveway, as much as there was thought put around drainage on the building site itself. I guess my concern would be that, we put in this driveway and then it goes underwater.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you are able to kind of keep an eye on that. The only thought I had was that possibly because they're still working on the retention basin and that kind of thing, that maybe the design, I'm not an engineer either or a civil engineer, but maybe the design has water running off into those retention basins. So we would pull it away from the driveway. But I could certainly ask Mike, the project manager, that question and see what his answer is.
Yeah, I mean, at least ask. I mean, I know it's really early, and my assumption is that there was some plan. But like I said, as I kind of noticed they were building up that drive temporarily, I was like, well, is there plans for those side parts of the property that maybe, I don't know how far those irrigation or drainage plans went. You know what I mean? Like if they were considering those side pieces of the driveway to be part of that irrigation plan, or not irrigation, but drainage plan.
Kanetta, it's good that you are right there at the scene, because you can take notes and bring them to the attention of Joel to talk with the builders about these puddles that are forming and whatever you seem to notice going on there. At the end of the project, we should not have places where water is collecting other than the retention pond.
Right.
So they would need to know where these things are popping up so that they can grade appropriately.
Yeah. No, I think that's true.
That was my concern, because it was more towards the front, towards where the entrance would be, more sort towards back where the building was, right? You know what I mean? So I know they spent a lot of time grading back towards where the building was, but I don't know how much time was or thought was put in. Oh, well, we have to grade over here, other than to, push up where the actual drive is going to be.
Yeah, well, and my thought was it certainly can't hurt to ask and get their answer now, so that if down the road we have issues, we have something to reference back. So for sure.
I would say it's a fair question after they dropped the ball on assessing the lot for rocks. So
yeah, right.
Be prepared for other unexpected bad decisions that might have been made along the way in the planning phase.
Yeah. You didn't, Chuck. I have to go back. I did ask them that question. I asked them why what got missed along the way, that we didn't know that the boulders were there. And let me go back and see.
Because I'm thinking if the lot was wooded, we would have had a huge expense clearing trees out. So it seemed to me like they just assumed that, oh, this is just loose gravel. We won't have to worry about anything. They must have missed the rock pile on some sort of site inspection.
Well, I can tell you right now, Chuck, having built here, that was pure and simple laziness because all they had to do was walk 20 feet. And even just looking at where they just built St. whatever that is, St. Catherine, St. Charles, or whatever that is, that new old folks home. I literally, before we even cleared our lot, I went over and stole rocks. It
Yeah.
is extremely rocky over here. We had to have rocks lifted. I have neighbors that have massive boulders in their yard. It is well known that this area over here is extremely rocky. So that from my perspective, it definitely was a poor site assessment, and anyone that's worked over here should have known that.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going back to look at the response, but as I remember, sorry, I'm scrolling down through. As I remember, I think the response was something along the lines of the civil engineer just used like, you know, soil makeup gets designated based on where you are in the county kind of thing. So if we wanted to pursue that, we probably could potentially do it with a civil engineer to have them, we could ask them some more questions and or, you know, have a more stern conversation about to see if they missed something or have, you know, something along those lines.
It's amazing how much it costs to move rocks.
Right.
$4,300. And this is, like everybody else said, it seems like you may have to be emphatic about that driveway to make sure when it's done from beginning to end that there's going to be no flooding. It's going to have drainage because sometimes, you know, you see people build things and their driveways are getting big puddles when it rains hard. So they're going to have to make sure their drainage is good for this whole driveway, beginning to end.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is get there Sunday morning and people not be able to get in because it's flooded.
Yeah.
And then in the wintertime, suppose it's really warm, it rains, and the next day it freezes. You've got an ice skating ring in that driveway.
Yeah. Tell me if you would go a different direction than this, but what I was thinking about was just sort of keeping, I mean, obviously we'll have record because of all these change orders, but at some point, either, you know, maybe it's the completion of the project or something. I don't exactly know where, and I could probably ask for some guidance there, but at some point, maybe, you know, we might want to consider some of these sort of estimates, or, you know, the civil engineer should have come out and noticed that those rocks were there. I mean, I don't know if there's legal ways or routes to try to recoup some of our increased expenses, but we definitely could ask about if that's a possibility, I guess. And by ask, I mean maybe talking to like our attorney or something like that to see what their thoughts are.
Yes, you should talk to the attorney about that. I wouldn't approach the civil engineer until I talked to the attorney, simply because they can't see what's underground.
Yeah, kind of thing where if we didn't tell them to move those rocks right away, we were going to delay the project. So we kind of had to just make a decision and go with it. But after the fact, you know, regardless, we were going to have to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who was responsible ultimately, but I don't think it was us. So we should spend a few minutes looking into that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And the timing of it may be important because, you know, if our attorney is going to send a civil engineer a letter and the civil engineer still has work yet to do for us, that might not be the wisest thing.
Well, and timing wise, I would be curious. I mean, how many civil engineers work in this area? Did they do any kind of assessment of some of the other areas that were built? I mean, it wasn't too long ago that our development was built. nor that other one that I said right over there, St. Catharines or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, if they just went based on soil sample, I mean, these are recent constructions that they could have assessed.
All they would have had to do was drive through your neighborhood to see all the rocks sitting around,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Or even just to look up what the previous assessments were.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's,
those are records.
Right.
So it sounds like they literally took the lazy way out.
Yeah, and the more I think about it, of course, the boulders were right where the retention pond was supposed to go. I would think that somebody would check to make sure that in and before the estimate is done, that we could actually dig a retention pond without running into things that need to be removed.
So I it's obviously not the builder's thing, right? They didn't do the assessment, and as you stated, there's we couldn't hold up the work, but I definitely think we need to go back to who hired the civil engineer. Was that us, or did we get them through?
we got them through the builder. The civil
the
engineer.
the architect
The architect.
contracts out the civil engineer.
Is the civil
So
engineer the one that decided where the retention pond needed to be?
Yes, I believe so.
so then that brings up the question. Then is it really, from that perspective, we probably wouldn't go after the civil engineer, or he was probably hired, and Greg will probably agree with me, or most of the folks on here who've ever done any kind of sourcing, it's probably going to be the architect.
Okay.
Because if the architect was responsible for the civil engineer, then that's probably who we would work for. But I agree that we should talk to the attorney first before we proceed. Who knows if it'll cost us more in legal fees than paying the
Right.
amended cost.
I have a feeling what the attorney's going to tell us is that this is one of those unforeseen hidden costs. And that's why we have a contingency.
Well, then that'll be a mark on their report.
How long do we have after the building is complete and we have moved in? How long do we have to make a checklist for the builder of things that need to be finished or fixed or whatever? I know that when you build a house, you have either 3 months or 6 months after the building of a house that your builder will say, make a punch list of things that you notice that are wrong, peeling, caulking, or whatever, puddles around the house. And I want to know how long that period of time is with our builder so that we're sure that we make those notes and get those things back to them and that they get fixed in a timely manner.
Yeah, for awareness, ours was a year.
Yours was a year?
Yeah, 1 year.
I have a feeling it might be a shorter amount of time for a commercial property.
Commercial.
Not commerce.
I think it was 1 year, but then there were certain things like roof and things that were longer. So
Okay.
I think it's important to understand what the builder supports, what the vendors, right, what their agreements are,
Well,
right?
and
What's builder responsibility versus vendor responsibility?
We'll be getting warranty pages from every vendor, every installer, everything. We'll be getting the warranties in writing that we need to make sure that we keep track of.
Okay.
Right, and some things are usually warranted by the vendors immediately, and some things are warranted by to your point, Carol, by the builder. Right. So some things are okay. Well, if the roof leaks, it's still us, or the furnace. If the furnace doesn't work, it's still us in that first year. But after the first year, then it's the company that holds the furnace, right?
Right.
Okay. Uh, well, I guess for tonight, we just, I guess since we're meeting, we can just maybe have you all give an approval to instruct Chuck to sign the change order, understanding that we're going to investigate if something was missed and we could recoup some of that money.
Are the rocks already moved? The rocks are already moved, right?
Yeah.
Can we talk to the lawyer before we sign the change order? Would that be a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean that's a possibility, but I think we probably have to endure. I don't know. You can correct me, or you can tell me if you want to go a different route. But we probably have to have the expense and then try to work backwards to try to recoup it.
I guess what my philosophy is on that, if they've already been paid, good luck getting money back.
Right.
But we did give them verbal instructions to move the pile instead of haul it away, which would have been 15,000, right?
Right.
But either way, the builder is not responsible to reimburse us anyway. So even Carol, in this particular case, the builder would have had to gotten paid either way, whether it was by us or by somebody else, right? So I think in this particular case, and again, I'm up, it's up for discussion, but I think, we are probably responsible to the builder to keep things moving.
Right.
And then at that point, right, because they're not the ones that made the mistake, and then we would have to look at whatever recourse we have to recoup those funds. If it was the builder that had made the mistake, then I would be right there with you in saying, yes, let's withhold those funds because the builder is the one we're arguing with. But in this case, the builder is not the one that made the error.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this was an error. Is my whole thing is that you cannot see rocks that are under the ground. I understand that there's a lot of rocks in the area, but you can't see what you can't see. So how were they to know that we were going to have that many huge rocks to move out of the area where the retention pond needs to go? I think it's one of those things where we're going to have to pay the overage in time that it took to clear that area. So, if you think you can get some of that money back through contacting the lawyer, I would say by all means contact the lawyer. If you can get a hold of the lawyer within a week and talk about that, it wouldn't hurt to hold off on signing this for maybe a week.
Yeah.
Well, let's go all the way to the end game here. And there's a dark version, there's a light version. The dark version is the lawyer says there's no way you're going to recover that without going to court. It'll cost you 10, 15 grand to pursue the judgment. You're going to spend 6 times as much that's the dark version. But let's say there's a light version where the $4,000 could be recouped fairly easily with very limited legal fees. I don't see how there's any way we're not on the line for paying the builder for doing what we agreed that the builder should do. I'm not sure I see the upside in delaying the payment to the builder. That payment would give us a document that we could then take to say, this is an expense that neither we nor the builder should have incurred. Is it possible to hold the architect or someone else accountable for it? So I'm trying to figure out what the upside is of waiting for keeping the builder whole.
I think so. Also, haven't we had a slow response from our lawyer in the past?
Okay.
Plus,
And
it's,
also, I think it sets a precedence for
I
future
think
work orders where they may delay our work because now they're worried that we're going to hold funds,
that's what I
and
was
this
gonna
is
say.
early in the build.
Let's
It's
not
it's
piss them
not
off
holding.
early. You don't want to piss them off right out the gate.
Well, it's not withholding funds. It's just a change order. It's not a bill.
Yeah,
That's true.
meaning arguing a change order is what I meant. Not withholding funds as in we're not paying them, but withholding funds as in like we're saying we're arguing over this, and they're going to be like, okay, is every change order going to be like this? So
I mean, we're not going to argue with them until we think we might have a case, right? And we need to know who to argue with if we think we might have something to argue about. I'm
Right.
still thinking we don't have anything to argue about. That this is one of those things that
Yeah.
nobody could foresee. I mean, it was tilled ground. It was farmland. Who would have thought there were these great big huge rocks under all that?
What you're saying, and worst case scenario, it's just $4,300 that has to come out of the contingency monies that we have, and we can try to see if we have. I think it's probably worth it to try to see if there's, if anything can be recouped. But yeah, I guess my first thought was, by I just don't want to irritate the builder right off the bat because I don't want that to be our real
right, and again, we're not
relationship. A way we
disagreeing with the
can
change.
right.
Sorry, Joel. We're not
No.
disagreeing with the change order, right? We knew the work had to happen. We
Yeah.
know that. The question comes when the bill comes, who's responsible for paying it? And so at the end of the day, the builder needs to understand that, yep, we understand this work had to be done. What we need to do is take this change order to the attorney and say, okay, when the bill comes, we don't want to pay this. Do we have recourse? And what is that recourse? And then to Greg's point, worst and best case scenario, worst case, he says, nope, this will cost you 10 grand. We say, forget it. It comes out of contingency. Best case scenario, he says,
Right.
small claims court, $400. We say, yep, go for it.
Okay.
I don't think it's very likely that we're
Question.
forfeiting our rights to recovery by signing a change order that was work that was required to be done to do the work. So,
Here's
Right.
my
And
other
like
question.
Kaneda is saying, we're not arguing with the fact that it needed done, just, if we should have been the ones having to pay for the whole thing.
Okay, I have another question. If we hadn't have told them to put the rocks on the south side of the property, what would they have done with them?
Well, one version is that the progress on the project would have ground to a halt while they waited for us to give them direction on what to do with the rocks that were in the way.
they
Yeah.
wanted to haul them away at a cost of $15,000. So I think Joel figured out a plan to just move them to the back of the lot and save us 10 grand.
Okay.
But I think if we spend zero at that moment in time, not 15,000, not 4,300, I think they're not making progress on the retention pond at all, waiting for us to tell them which direction to go.
Okay.
Right. Yes, I think you are correct, Greg.
Okay, so they were saying that they had to haul them away.
That was the first communication we got about it was, here's the issue. The excavators say it'll cost 15 grand to haul them away. And then we kept talking back and forth and, with a brainstorm with the, asked them if there was an option to just move them on the property out of the way for now. So that is what happened.
Are they real big rocks?
They're
Is
big.
there are a lot
Yeah.
of them?
Some are.
Because down the road would a gravel yard buy those? Because gravel yards buy rocks and, they dig them out of their own quarry lake and they grind those things up for roads and whatever. Maybe a gravel yard would buy them. The guy charging the 15,000 probably would have sold them to a gravel yard.
Right. Yeah, that was our thought too. Was that the right contact of somebody who would, at the very least, want them and take them, and best case scenario, maybe pay us something for them. But we realized very quickly it was going to take us a while to figure that out. So for the project to keep moving forward, we were going to have to move them somewhere.
Right. But we also have 9 acres that we could use them for landscaping on our own property.
Yes.
So we might want to think about that when it comes down to landscaping.
Yeah, it'd be ironic to have to buy some later.
Yeah, that would be really stupid to have to buy rocks later.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it? Because people who want that in their landscaping have to pay a hefty price for those rocks, but we have rocks to try to get that we don't want right now. So, yeah. Okay, so it sounds like we're in agreement that we go ahead and have Chuck sign the change order, and then we'll see what other options we have to try to recoup any part of that contingency, I guess.
Okay.
All in favor of that, give me a thumbs up, I guess. Okay. All right, so Chuck, I just responded to you today, but I guess we can go ahead and, if you don't mind signing that, and we can get it sent back over to Weaver. When they sent that, they didn't really say, like, we need this back at a certain time. I just figured they probably need it back as soon as we can. But.
Yeah, I'll take care of it tomorrow.
Okay. All right. We haven't yet received I don't think we've received an invoice from Weaver, so maybe the next meeting, I'm sure by the next meeting we all get together, we'll have one of the monthly invoices from Weaver so we can, get an idea of what those are going to look like and go over them. One other thing I wanted you to look at tonight to give us some direction on is we had some issues with getting statements sent to us from Church Extension. So apparently they were trying to send us statements for a while, and I don't know where they were sending them, but they weren't coming to us. So we finally got it worked out when they realized we were months behind on making any kind of payments to Church Extension. So let me see if I can bring that up to show you here real quick. Maybe I can. All right, one sec here. Window. There. Okay. So we finally got it worked out, and they started emailing Donna the statements. So this is a discussion Donna and I were having was, so we have our current balance with them is this $9,064 number. And let me pull up what that is for you, which I'm sure is the next question. So Donna said, so $5,200 American title insurance to pay closing recording fees, $26 closing fee with Church Extension, and then $3,790 to set up the investment note in order to satisfy one of the terms of our agreement with them. So it was $9,000 is the total. And the way it's set up, and from what I understand from Donna, we're just paying interest only on any balance we have currently. So all of those were costs that were incurred when we first So we're paying 5.25% interest on that $9,000, which works out to be like $40 a month or so. So the discussion Donna and I were having that I want to ask you all about is if you think we should just keep paying. I guess the options are to keep paying the minimum, payment to them, which would be I think it's just maybe the $40 a month. I was looking at this, although I'm not 100% sure of that. That's the interest, I guess, and then the rest is principal that we maybe be paying on. I don't know, but essentially, Don and I were talking and throwing around the idea of just paying that $9,000 because we're paying 5.25% interest on it, and that's more than we're earning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, even with I would say with the PPP money influx, that it would be a better financial decision to go ahead and pay this off. And as far as I'm concerned, get this off, and then, but obviously that's just my vote.
If we pay it, we won't be incurring then any costs and/or have to pay any interest with them until the end of our project, whenever we actually borrow the money from them that we need.
I agree with Kanetta. We need to pay this off. We need to show them good faith in the fact that, we are seriously behind on payments, and they need to know that we're. But the 5.25% or whatever, that we don't need to pay that. We can afford to do this now.
And really, us not making the payments was not our fault. It was Church Extension, and they took responsibility. So I didn't see on any of the statements where they charge us any kind of late fee or anything like that. But if my thought was, if for some reason there is, we could talk to Craig, and I'm sure we could work out not having to pay those fees because they were having issues generating those statements and are still having issues getting us connected to the online access to our statements so that Donna can go in and check it and/or pay it online.
Is this the first time they've done this?
I don't know. I can't tell you that. I don't know. I wonder if having everything online like this is maybe newer to them. As being church is always at least a decade behind everybody else in the world, so
yeah, okay.
That's very possible. But yeah, I guess I was just thinking in my mind that at 5.25%, we're probably earning more, even though it's minimal amount of principal. We're probably earning more on that. We'd be ahead to just pay it, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. So if you can agree to that and give a thumbs up to Donna transferring, I guess we'd be transferring money from the building fund and UBS to pay that and send that money to Church Extension.
Yes.
All in favor, thumbs up. Those not in favor, thumbs down.
I'll just say thumbs up since I'm not on video.
Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate that. Yes. Okay. All right.
By the way, Joel, the way that we do this at work is at work we always say, if anyone doesn't agree, speak your piece now or forever hold your peace.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so I didn't know how far we would get with all of this, but I wanted to get through all of that up until now, and then just to give us a sense of what is down the road for us as trustees, I guess we have we are going to have our congregational meeting on the second Sunday in November, the 8th, and we're going to attempt to do it virtually like this with everyone. So that should be exciting and fun. So trustees, we just need by that sometime before that Sunday in November, we need a proposed budget for 2021. So I started thinking about that a little bit today, and we have some interesting variables to try to figure out. So we probably, my thought was maybe we could have, I don't know, well, what about this plan? Maybe, Chuck, would you be willing to take an initial stab at that and look at that budget, and then we could have another trustee meeting, something like that, and go over a proposed budget?
Yeah, sure.
And some of the variables I was just thinking about off the top of my head, I know last time we did this, you all were way better at the math than me, but, you know, trying to figure out interest earned, because we'll be spending down the money that we have in investments, so we won't have as much of that to deal with, and a couple other things. So we'll have to kind of try to figure out what our budget is going to look like, knowing that as we spend 2021 is probably, we're probably going to want to keep things as tight as possible, so that just because we're not going to have as much money in the bank to potentially access as we have in the past because of all that building fund money sitting there. So the other thing I just wanted to try to gauge, and maybe Chuck and I can get our heads together on this, but I'm interested in what your general thoughts and feelings are on doing a stewardship campaign yet in September, October, maybe something like that, and or what you think we should be shooting for in doing a stewardship campaign. Thoughts on that?
I don't know if this is a silly question, but I actually don't know what a stewardship campaign is.
Yeah, no, that's not a silly question. So in the past, generally before we get to the point of making a budget, we're promoting people's generosity and giving to, with the end goal or of trying to get people to pledge or increase their pledge slightly from what they were giving this year, to give us some pretty close to solid numbers on what we expect giving to be for the coming year. So the idea, the end result we're shooting for would be to try to get people to let us know how much they think they'll be able to give to the church in the coming year. And then that gives us some numbers to work with to make a budget.
I see. Thank you.
Good job of explaining that, or somebody else want to take a stab at that?
Well, and I would think we could start with, you know, some sort of discussion where we would discuss the budget, where we are, and then set a goal of how much money we think we might need to make ends meet long term. And then based on that, give everyone an idea of how much each individual could, you know, as a percentage of their giving, consider increasing, that how that would affect the budget. And then have a heart-wrenching sermon from Pastor Joel about stewardship and what the money is going to be used for and all that good stuff.
Right.
So align it to our financial review with the congregation, or at least do it in the immediate Sunday after. Like, now you've seen the numbers, and this is what we need, right?
I kind of thought we're. Sorry, I'm putting my thoughts together. A year or more ago, I saw another church in Texas that I follow. Their pastor did a number of videos. They were using video and YouTube ahead of all the rest of us who just got forced to start to do it all the time now. And, you know, she kind of went through for the members of their church where they sat financially. So trying to, as simplistically as possible, to give people a sense of where the church is, and then sort of make a sales pitch to ask people, a hard ask for people to give. So it's kind of a development, campaign. If you were in the nonprofit world, it would be something along those lines.
Personally, I think if you align it with the budget conversation, it's going to be fresher in people's minds as to why it's important, right? Like you can say, hey, here's where your money went, and this is why it's so important, right?
Yes.
Because if you align it to that, it's more prevalent in their mind versus just kind of a nebulous thing.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and I think, there's good examples of doing this, like, NPR running their campaigns where they have people coming on talking about, why they listen to public radio, that kind of thing. So that is, in essence, the stewardship campaign, but the church way of talking about it is, that we have a call to generosity and to be good stewards of the money that we've been blessed with in our lives. So that's typically the message that we try to put out there.
I don't think we need to spend months on it either. I mean, I think hit it a couple times at a couple services and then have a sermon. I don't think you need to preach a whole series on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought maybe we could even just do one Sunday and subsidize it, or do some other short video clips, or a video clip of me explaining where we are financially, that kind of thing, throughout the week via email, and then try to make it a more intense campaign over a week, maybe 2 weeks, and most, but in just 1 week, and maybe you're getting an email from us each day about what we're doing as a church and a little bit about what we're looking for. That might work pretty well. All right.
Joel, sorry. I pulled out my old notebooks from other meetings, and I had asked the question earlier what the capital campaign referred to in Donna's, financial statement, and it looks as if that was our building campaign, the 3-year building campaign. So maybe we've already finished that previous 3-year stewardship campaign we had. What was that, 3 or 2 or 3
It
years?
might have been. I think it was 2. Yeah.
2.
It was 3, and it's finishing this year.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay.
I've been paying on it.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, well, I'll still clarify with her to see where she's accounting for those numbers. That's a question I have too, is just, did she just roll that into what people's pledges are, or has she been keeping track of it separately? Okay, well, I think that is probably a good place to pause then, and I go through things. So Chuck, if you're willing to take an initial stab at the budget, I can try to put together a preliminary, sort of a rough draft or plan of what a stewardship campaign could look like, and then maybe we can meet again here in like 3 weeks and go over a budget. I do think it would be good to have a rough idea of what we're shooting for as far as a budget for next year, so that we can then try to make some appeal to the congregation on what we're asking for from each of us for generosity. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to throw out there or discuss? All right. Let me look at the calendar. What would you all say to, could we meet like the 22nd maybe in the evening? That's another Tuesday night. I got one thumbs up from Chuck,
That works.
Debbie, Carol, Blanchard's.
That works.
Okay. And Canetta, perfect. Okay. So I'll put that on the calendar and send you all that email, and we'll shoot for that as our deadline to get some of that other budgeting and stewardship work. We'll have other building stuff to talk about, so I think that should be good. Awesome. Thank you all. If there's anything else, speak now or forever hold your peace, I guess. Very good. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you again. And you can look for that email confirmation on the meeting on the 22nd.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
All right. Yeah. Take care, everybody. Appreciate it.